Word processing might not be the most complicated application in Office, and most people think it's just typing and there's nothing else to know. However, many people use Word at different levels. Some people open it, type, and are happy with how it appears on the page. Other people, though, create formatted and complex documents that have several features, such as sections and referencing. Word 2010 has several new features that help us work faster, more efficiently, more accurately, and more safely. In this chapter, we'll look at what Word 2010 offers in those regards. Office is all about efficiency and flexibility. There are features like Outline View, Document Map, Browse by Object, and Thumbnails. These come in handy when you need to have longer or complex documents. These features were available in earlier versions of Word, but most users didn't know about them unless they came upon them by chance or were specifically told. But now these tools are easier to find and to work with, thanks to Word for Office Navigation Pane. Let's take a quick review of this document, and I'll show you what the navigation pane can do. The document is called Training Proposal, and you'll find it in your Chapter 4 Project Files folder. I look at the status bar and see that the document is 7 pages long. That's not very large, but it's still big enough that finding content might be tricky. As I scroll through, I see that I have objectives. On the second page, there are a few tables, one for delivery methods, one for ILT delivery models. As I continue to scroll, I see different sections for computer-based training and other things like investments, other training options, and system requirements. Finally, I come to desk-side training, on-site types of training, and a couple of appendices, one for system requirements. And on the last page, some course pricing. I'll press Control Home to get back to the top of the document. Now I'll display the navigation pane. For Office are purely intuitive, so it's not difficult to figure out how to view something. I gave you a little hint there. I go to the View tab, and there's a check mark specifically for the navigation pane, and how we turn grid lines on and off in the document if you're concerned about precise layout. Right now, though, we're concentrating on the navigation pane, so I'll check that, and we see it on the left-hand side, although the panel can be moved around. It might look familiar to you, like the Research Task pane or the ClipArt Task pane. Several things do look like it, but it's really a new thing to look at, and it has some very interesting features. First of all, we see a drop-down arrow, which means we can do different things with it. This particular arrow is about moving, sizing, or closing, and it also has a close button. Then we see search capabilities. I can perform incremental searches within my document without having to do anything extra, such as a lot of configuration. However, there are some options that we can set, and I'll show you those a little later. Now we know that this document is for the training company. For now, though, let's say I'm not that specific about what I want to find. I'll type in the word. Like many of the current features of Windows and Office, it starts to search before I finish typing. It found 10 matches, and now I can begin to look at the different tabs. There are 3 different views we can work with within the navigation pane. The first one is going to be by headings. Here we find some things that we just saw in the document: features, benefits, reporting, investment, etc. If I click the middle button, I see a thumbnail view, and lastly, the results for my search. This might be a good place to start. Since I've searched for a specific word, or at least a combination of letters, I know there are 10 matches. I can see in context what it found. If I pause over it, for example, I can see the first one is on page 1, Training Company, and it highlights where it found the word. If I continue, I'll find that it will actually use the same one over again. If you want to see more of the search results in combination and in context, you can always look at the document itself. Here we see that the search results are highlighted in the document as well. Since this is a standard search, I won't spend a lot of time telling you how to search because that's a universal skill. But look at this. To the right of the text box, we can click on the X to clear it, or that will turn into a magnifying glass if you want to search. And there's a drop-down where we can find things like options. Again, these are some that are fairly common with different types of find and replace features, matching case, finding the whole words only using wildcards. You can configure this. It's very similar to doing the old find within a document. In addition to this drop-down, there are things like the full find and replace. We can find go-to. We can use a find feature using a text box, and we can even do the equivalent of browse by object or go to types of objects like graphics, tables, equations, headers and footers, etc. Since I know there are some tables in this document, I'll choose tables to show you how this works. Now instead of seeing 11 results, we see 3. You'll also notice that my document scrolled down to page 2, where my first table is. And of course, it also happens to be where my second table is. But again, we don't see the results here. If I go to something like the thumbnail view, this makes it a little easier. It's showing me only 2 pages, pages 2 and 7. Remember that page 2 has 2 tables, so that's how we get to our 3 entries. So it's very handy. We can search quickly through the document by words or parts of words, things that sound like other words, wildcards, and even types of content. To get rid of this, I click the X to remove the search features. Now we've talked a little bit about these different views, I want to go back to the Browse by Headings. If we take a close look at this, not only can we see these, but we can also use them to navigate. So I click on Features, and it takes me directly to that heading, which happens to be on page 3. Likewise, if I go to System Requirements, I can quickly bounce around. That's why this becomes very useful in longer documents. For example, I work with a lot of attorneys. The documents can be very long and complex, and it gets very difficult to tell where one section starts and stops. Likewise, in a term paper or thesis, we need a structured document with clearly defined sections and headings. This tool makes proofing and editing those complex documents a breeze, and business people who work with business plans, contracts, or employee handbooks, which are all lengthy and have a similar structure with sections and proper formatting, can also benefit. As long as you're using headings and styles, you'll be able to use this feature to quickly move through your document. And it's not limited to moving through the document. You can also use the navigation pane to reorganize your document. For example, if I want live internet-based training to be below System Requirements, I can drag and drop. I'll press and hold my mouse on Live Internet-Based Training. I drag down. We see the bolded horizontal line that shows me where I'll drop it. And if I let go, I have just completely swapped all of that content. Now that could be just a heading, or it could be a paragraph, or it could be 500 pages. Word simply takes all of the content that's underneath that particular heading level and moves it where I tell it to go. That can be a great time saver, especially if you've ever tried to click and drag to select multiple pages of text and found yourself zooming too far into the document. You end up spending 20 minutes zooming up and down on your screen, not getting anything accomplished. Instead, it's faster, more efficient, and much less frustrating to simply press and hold my left mouse button, drag a section where I want it to go, let go of it, and I've just rearranged content. And there are other little tools that we can see. Don't forget your right click, because if you right click on a heading, once again, you see different options. I can promote a heading or demote a heading. If you're familiar with the outline view, this is where all of this functionality comes from, but now I'm still within the main view of my document. I can put new headings before, new headings after, new subheadings. I can delete sections. I can select a heading and all of its contents. I can even print just the heading and its contents. So let's say I'm trying to proof a document, maybe a training manual, and I want somebody to look at a specific chapter or module. I don't have to go in, find out where it starts and where it stops. I simply open the navigation pane, click on the section I want, and say print that, whether it's 1 page or 50 pages. I hope you're as excited about this as I am. I'll press Escape just to get out of this menu, and the last thing I wanted to mention is if there are co-authors, you can easily identify their content by a co-authoring indicator that will show up on these headings as well. So the navigation pane is a great way to get an overview of your document, to more easily understand structure, to find content within it, and even to arrange it, all from one easy-to-use pane. I know a lot of people never actually look at the View tab, so if you haven't ever looked there before, take a quick look. There are many interesting things. One of the newest things is the introduction of the navigation pane, and I think you'll find it useful whenever you work with anything more than 2 or 3 pages long, and especially if you use styles and headings appropriately.